And welcome to another episode of this weekly video series where I take time out on a Sunday to sit down and answer the questions that have been asked throughout the week, sent in from around the world. So we try to make this segment go for anywhere between 15 to 30 minutes, and I have them on my iPad over here. So let's go. I haven't pre-read them. What's one thing most people think is healthy but could actually be holding back their results? Hmm. Probably the most common thing I would say there is under eating. People just look statistically around the world, but I say around the world, say the US and say Australia here. US is ahead of Australia, but we're rapidly catching the percentage of people that are considered overweight or obese. It's around 70%. So a room of 10 people, seven people on average are likely to be overweight or obese. So therefore, more likely to have health issues, certainly energy issues and so forth as well. So uh, for a lot of people that are in that category, they believe that the less they eat, the better their results will come, certainly in terms of weight loss. The problem is that I see this a lot with women. They tend to go through this stage of when I first do a coaching session with people, I say, I snack too much. There is absolutely nothing wrong with snacking. In fact, I would encourage you to snack, but normally it's people snacking on the wrong things, not highly nutritious things. They're snacking on things that are maybe high in sugar, high in fats, high in like higher energy carbohydrates, as opposed to let's focus on some protein, plant-based food as well in those snacks. So that tends to be the biggest problem. So people can get into like reducing the number of times they're eating through the day and then kind of eating like a sparrow and over exercising and things like that. But the reality is, I've worked with some clients that their calories have been so low that we need to increase their calories a fair bit so that they can actually lose weight. And you think, well, how does that work? Surely if, say, like the average woman, for instance, needs to eat around 1,800 calories. I'm using an average here to maintain their weight, 1,800 to 2,000. And so if you think about, all right, well, I'm going to cut that down to 1,000, surely I'll lose weight much quicker. But the reality is that your body will go into a starvation mode if you're not feeding yourself enough. And what we want to do is reprogram the metabolism so it's going like this as fast as possible. So like while I sit here, while I sleep, etc., it's going like this. And there's a method to reprogramming. And part of it is building muscle, part of it is doing ongoing cardio. But a huge part of it is eating the right foods, which has an impact directly on your metabolism. And then the frequency of your eating also has an impact. So if you think about it like this, if you, let's say you just ate once, I'm going to itchy nose. If you only eat once a day, over time, your body is going to say, well, I know, Rob, that you're only going to feed me once. So I've got to slow everything down because I've got to make this food last because I don't know what you're going to do with me today. So I've got to slow it right down. Now, the reverse is also true as you start to, let's say you go from 1 to 6, you're eating every 2 to 3 hours, which is how I work with my clients. Then your body's quickly going to know, oh, I've got to burn this off because you're got another meal coming up in a few hours' time. So it naturally increases. Now I'm really simplifying the science and everything, and then it comes down to the types of foods you're eating and all that kind of stuff. But that's how it works. So I think that is probably the most common thing that I say people think is healthy by eating less, but it's actually holding them back. So normally people will overtrain, undereat, under recover, and therefore wonder why they're not getting the results that they want. So you've got to be careful. All right, if you could only do three, I love these questions, only do three exercises for the rest of your life, what would they be and why? Well, my my daughters used to ask me, Dad, if you were just like a head on a stick, what would you think life would be? Or if you had to go without your eyes or your, your ears, or would you prefer not to have any arms and legs and be able to have all your other senses? There's no need to just only do three exercises. But to answer the question, what I would be looking at is the ones where I get the biggest bang for the buck. Okay. So the first one there would be deadlifts, right? Why deadlifts? So that's squatting down, grabbing a bar, lifting it up, just standing up with it. Not doing your fancy Olympic lifts and that kind of stuff. They put too much pressure on the joints, and they're very ballistic moves and can be quite dangerous. But just a deadlift is very functional, right? How often do you have to squat down and pick up something off the floor? Right? Or just squat down, bend down to do something, put on your shoes, get into a cupboard, anything like that. So it's very, very functional. And so when you practice proper technique as well, you'll just be less prone to injury. And it works pretty much every muscle in your body. As you lift heavier, you're working your calves, you're working your hamstrings, you're working your quads, you're working your glutes, you're working your abs. You're working your arms, back, shoulders, you name it, neck muscles. It's moving absolutely everything. So that would be one. Another one would be, oh, look, honestly, it's probably the three big powerlifting moves. Bench press, making your upper body really strong. So like flat bench press, something like that. For me, I can't do flat heavy, so I would go on a 15-degree incline. And then squats. So body weighted squats. If you're holding a weight, squat down, come back up again. Again, I can't do heavy ones of those because of my back, so I tend to do leg press. So they would be the ones that I would be doing if I could only pick three. They work the biggest muscles in your body. They're very functional, and you can't go wrong with that. All right. What's a mental muscle most people neglect, and how can they train it daily? Well, here, obviously, it's the mindset and what controls what it is that we do. Whether it's like a Sunday today, why am I recording a video? What time is it? It's 9:32. Like I got up before 6 a.m. I did a very heavy leg workout today. I then fueled myself. I posted a podcast. I went for a 5 kilometer walk. During that walk, I recorded two more podcasts. I did some strategic thinking. I come back home, I've had a little rest, I'll fuel my body again with another meal, and now I'm recording this. And it's on a Sunday at 9:30, and a lot of people are still in bed, right? And still wondering, what am I going to do today? I had a massive day yesterday, and I've got a bunch of things to do after I post this video that I need to do around the home and just also for my personal growth and everything as well. So what controls me in doing that versus somebody staying in bed and saying, well, I'll just, sit around watching Netflix all day. It's my mindset, right? And what I attach to the movement and the things that I do through the day. It's really important for me to keep on growing, to keep on doing things. If I don't do things around the home, they don't just happen by themselves. Yeah, can I outsource a bunch of stuff? Yeah, but I like to do things myself as well. There's a sense of pride and also action in knowing that I'm doing things to make the place look good and feel good in the sense of accomplishment and stuff as well. So that is the mental muscle, the mindset that people tend not to work on a daily basis. I have this philosophy that I want to continuously grow 7 days a week. I work on the growth of me as a person, and I work on the growth of my business and various other aspects from time to time as well. The one that I make sure that I work on every single day is my personal growth, because if I'm growing as a person and growing as a better man and as a better human, then I know that that will spill over into all the other areas of my life as well as business. So, for instance, I think we could all do with working on our communication skills more every day. How do you become a better communicator? And you know what? One big way in which you, particularly men, can become better communicators is with these things. Okay, listen, actively listen without judgment, and don't try and solve everybody's problems. Just listen. And sometimes people just want to be heard and they just want to be seen. So many people feel invisible. Like I felt I was invisible for decades of my life until I realized that that was just a mindset that I had. And so every day I work on that for at least an hour, usually at night time, sometimes in the morning usually in the morning when I'm out having my walk. I record over the 5 kilometers. It takes me about an hour with the pace that I walk. For the first sort of two-thirds of the my session, I will record two podcasts, one for each show, and then I'll use the last third for strategic thinking and personal growth. And then I will also work on it from about eight, depends on my client's schedule, but I'll say between 8 to 9 p.m. I say no more work, and I'll make sure I do at least 30 minutes of personal growth before I go to sleep every night. And that helps me grow. So just like your biceps, chest, back, everything that we're working in the gym, you have to continuously work your mind muscle, right? Work your mindset, become a better person, and you'll become more mentally tough and more resilient and more able to problem solve. Next question, can you be too disciplined? When does routine start to sabotage growth or joy? Hmm. It's a good question. I often get a bit of judgment from clients and people saying, you don't always have to grow. You work too hard. You should have a holiday. You should do this. You should do that. Well, okay, that's other people projecting their thoughts, values, beliefs onto me. I know who I am. I know what it is that I want to do in life and how quickly time flies by. And if I reflect back in my life, so when I was like 16, I got my very first business improvement book or personal improvement book, I'll say, which was called Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude. And I was really inspired by the book. However, my regret is that I never finished the book, right? And what put me off in the book were sort of religious references, and there's a lot of God this and God that and whatever. And I'm not a religious person, and it put me off. And I guess I was at an age when I was reading it that I wasn't able to just kind of take that for what it was, but still go with the message of what it meant to have a positive mental attitude. And then if I had have kept up with that, I guess, hunger for success, I would have gone to that next book and that next book. And then I would have discovered that there are self-development and self-improvement programs. And at the time when I did that, there was no internet, there was no Google, there was no YouTube, there was none of that sort of stuff. It was all through books and probably programs that were CDs and that kind of and DVDs and that sort of thing. And when they came, yes, they would have been cassette tapes when I first started. And I didn't keep going with that. So that's probably one of my biggest regrets. But now I'm so disciplined in what it is that I want to do because I know how quickly the last 10 years have gone by. And I think if I don't continue to grow at the same pace or increase the amount of growth that I have, then I'm going to miss opportunities. I'm going to get to the end of my life in another 10 years and I'll be closer to 70. And it's like, well, even at my age, as I can get it closer to 60, people think about retirement, not doing anything. I'm thinking about still not reaching my full potential. I'm wanting to keep going and keep going. And to me, that's what excites me about life and the future and what I've got ahead of myself. And so for me, I don't think I can become too disciplined because I know what it means when I am disciplined. And this is one of the things about, I guess, having I say obsession, a little obsession around understanding successful people, any field, around the world and being able to interview so many of them and have dinner with celebrities and stuff and just tap into their mind about what hard work means for them and whether they love the work or not. And any successful person that I've spoken to, they absolutely love the work and like love the training, love doing all of that sort of stuff. And if you pull apart their daily schedule, they're very, very disciplined because we're humans, right? We're not robots and we perform best when there is structure. Okay. That's how we perform at our absolute best. So I love that. So for me, I don't think I can become too disciplined. The way I conduct my whole life is very disciplined. So the second part of the question, when does routine start to sabotage growth or joy? Well, I mean, that's a valid point. If you are getting to the point where your routine is starting to not feel like fun anymore, then that normally means there needs to be a break. So I use myself as an example. I love my workouts. And if I get to the point where I'm dragging my butt into the gym, or I'm halfway through a workout, I'm really not enjoying it. I know I'm not putting my 100% effort or focus that I would like into it. That tells me that it's time for a break, right? So I tend to work in 12-week training blocks when I'm super focused. I will then, I've got goals to reach in 3, 4 week training blocks. I'll then take a week off strength training. I'll still go for my walks and focus on food and stuff, but I'll have a week off my training altogether. And then when I come back for that next week, I will just get into the gym and do the same number of sessions, but I will do completely different workouts. And then the week after that, I will get back into my focused workouts again. And I find that normally helps. And in the week off, where I'm not doing strength training, I make sure that I'm doing things that really excite me, motivate me, inspire me about my health and wellness, fitness, and so forth. And for me, where traditionally it's been, and I hope one day, I mean, do you think they'll bring back magazines at some point? Obviously, there's still a bunch out there, but I used to love my muscle and fitness magazines. They'd come once a month. I'd wait for it to come in the letterbox. And, I just love being inspired by the different stories and everything. So I've got I don't know, 50, 60 maybe of the old muscle and fitness magazines. So I'll just grab an old one and I'll read it and flick through it and be inspired by whether it's someone's body, different workout, getting different workout ideas, different food, different fun facts about nutrition or body or things like that. And when I pick up a really old one, now I use AI to see, I wonder where this person is now, or I wonder whether there's any further research now in this particular field. So I find that particularly interesting. So bottom line, I find things that will inspire me. So yes, when the fun starts to disappear, it normally means like I'm overtraining, overworking, something like that, and it's time for me to take a break. And I'll just do that. And then I'll find that after I take that week off and then get back into my workouts, for instance, I find that that hunger comes back. But if again I'm into that second week and it's like, yeah, it's still not there, it probably means that I need to take a little bit more time. So I'll never take more than 2 weeks away from the gym. So I know that it really fills me up. And I will also think about maybe I'm not recovering enough, maybe I'm not getting enough sleep, maybe I'm not getting sufficient nutrients, maybe my iron levels are down a little bit, which is direct relate to energy. So maybe I'll take a supplement for a month and just once a day iron tablet. So I will look at those things as well. So I don't think that's a case of being too disciplined. I think it's a case of just the workload can just tire us out sometimes, and we need to just shake things up and do it a little bit differently. That's a good question. So, next question: what's one nutrition rule you used to believe that you've completely changed your mind about? Hmm. All right. So, one of the things that I learned, oh golly, maybe 12 years ago. It's called metabolic precision, and it's a style of teaching about around your health and wellness that Dr. Paul Cribb is my strength and conditioning coach for a few years around COVID. And one of the things that he used to teach, or still does, teach is about this concept of a metabolic window, which exists for 3 hours. It's quite technical, and that window opens only around an intense strength workout or an intense cardio workout. So, for instance, it opens when right at the start of your workout. That's when it opens. I think I've paint on my arm here has come off on the it has it's come off on the table. Jeez, that's weird. Um, and so yeah, so the 3 hours starts from the time of the workout. So let's just say that workout lasts for 1 hour. So there's a pre-workout with some protein, post-workout with some protein, and then so we're an hour in, and so then you would then have a hard meal at that hour one, and then whether it's so then you've got an hour after that, another hour after that to give you 3 hours. So within that 3 hours, you then have another meal, which is normally something like a smoothie with like for me about 40 grams of protein and stuff in it, and that's how you would eat, and making sure that there's omega-3 in every single meal and so forth. And so when I first started doing it, I really struggle. So what it means is, and they've got high energy carbs in there. So you've got your protein, you've got your plant food, and you've got some higher energy carbohydrates, whether that be something like oats or rice, potato, quinoa, pasta, breads, wraps, all that kind of stuff. And outside that 3 hour window, you wouldn't eat it, right? And so when I first started doing it, I found it so hard. It's like, oh man, I need to have these high energy carbs. I need to have these high energy carbs. I can't do it without it. And it took me probably 3 months before I realized that by getting that nutrient timing right, it had a dramatic impact on my body. And then it's about aligning, okay, well, what does a situation where you really want to drop body fat versus maintenance look like? And then that was putting back in, say, I'll say a cupful of those high energy carbohydrates for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then that enabled me to maintain it. So my point here is that when I first learned it, I thought it's impossible and too freaky to be able to live without high energy carbs outside that metabolic window. But it is, and a part of it is just to do with your mindset. That like there's a real energy aspect, but if you're getting the other components right, you'll find that it can work really well. Now, it's quite technical. Don't just try and do it based on what I said. You really need to work with someone like me that's trained in it so you know how to do it and implement it properly and listening to your body and all that kind of stuff. But it's certainly where I am at the moment. I am more of a maintenance type mode. So I have it in at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And that works really well for me. But people say, "Oh, well, you're so lean and everything." I'm only so lean because I have to really be focused on my food. I'm just like anyone else. If I just ate anything, if I ate probably like I used to when I first started training, I would be quite overweight. Those foods that I used to eat a lot of bread, those foods just don't work the same in me now, and I prefer to eat less processed things to get a better nutritional value. So. Yeah, so that's probably one thing. Last question. What does mental fatigue feel like in the body, and how do you know when it's time to reset versus push through? So that's, I suppose, comes back to like the fourth question I answered about can you be too disciplined? So for me, mental fatigue. All right, maybe I'll explain it like this. I do a lot of media stuff for my daughter, and I did a big interview this week. It was about an hour, and by the end of these media interviews, when I go quite deep about the depths of pain for Liv and everything, what I've identified when it first happened, I thought, "What's happening to my body? Like what? Like what's going on?" Within like 24 hours after an interview, I was just like, I'm completely zonked, and I'm like, "What am I depressed? Am I like what's going on?" And now I understand what it is, which I'll explain in a second. But now I find within 1 hour to 4 hours after I do one of these heavy interviews, I just get this wave of physical fatigue, right? And what it is, it's the emotion kind of rushing through my body. And there are some times, if I do a lot of media, there are some times where I'm going to say I find it difficult to walk. I don't mean that like I'm crippled or anything like that. It just means that I feel really like I have jelly legs is the best way to explain it. And I think it's a combination of the adrenaline fatigue, fallout, if you like, and just the way that the emotions and speaking so frequently about all of the pain with Liv, the way that it floods through my nervous system. And then that often shows up as physical fatigue, right? It's like a mental overload and shows up in physical fatigue. And so what I've learned now, it's not always possible, but what I try to do is block out maybe a couple of hours, even 2 to 3 hours after I do one of these heavy interviews, particularly if it's a live media interview or a deep one, like on a 60 Minutes or something like that, which sometimes that can be a day and a half of filming, depending on how big the story is. I'll take 2 to 3 hours afterwards so that I can just allow my body to do whatever it is. I will often say get out in nature, go for a walk. The last one I did, I just laid out outside in the shade, looking up at the sky. I look up at the clouds, and I think about Liv. Usually, I have a bit of a cry as well because it's like me just remaining in tune with my feelings as Liv's dad and remaining close to her. And then I'll just get back on board, right, with what it is that I need to get done. So for me, that's an emotional fatigue that turns up, like a mental fatigue, which then turns up into physical fatigue. So I suppose the best way that I can say it is that it's like you have jelly legs. And how do you know when there's a time to reset versus push through? So, like I just said, for me, that's about the reset after I do these interviews and say, all right, I need to take time out, and I know what works for me and will work for most. Get out in nature, right? So I'll just go for a walk. Or like in this particular instance, I was exhausted, so I just had to lay down and a little bit of sleep outside in the shade. And for me, that was a reset. Going for a walk, even if it's like an hour walk or a half-hour walk or something, I'll listen to some music and do whatever. And if it's around live stuff, I'll say, all right, I'm giving myself 15 minutes. I'm just going to feel really sad and cry and attached to Liv and how I miss her and all that kind of stuff. For me, that's the reset. And like if it's 15 minutes, I'll say that's maybe what, 4 songs, maybe something like that. Sometimes I'll listen to some sad music and say, all right, I just need to have a cry to get it out. And that's my reset. Um, and then those moments of when to push through. Sometimes I will just feel like, man, I feel tired, but I want to keep pushing. And so I might just get up and have, say, 10 minutes of walking, 3 minutes of walking, 5 minutes of walking, do some push-ups or, say a mantra or do something that is going to help me just be able to reset in a moment. So I had a couple through the, wait, this is driving me nuts. At least it's coming off the arm. Um, through the week where I said, man, I'm so tired. I hadn't slept so well. So, that's often a sign. And then I said, right, I want to produce a 90-minute power block. And these are all the things that I want to get done. And I really set the goal high. So, like, there will be some transactional stuff in there. So this week I did it on 2 days. I said, I had 13 items on my list that I wanted to do. I thought, okay, how do I get some early runs on the board? All right, these 3 are really simple. Bang, let's do those. Bang, 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 bang. And then move on to the next one and the next one and the next one and keep an eye on the clock. And twice I was able to do it. One went from I got to 90 minutes and I hadn't finished one. I thought, all right, I'm going to take 10 more minutes and finish it. Did that, and it was so satisfying. Right now, it would have been easy to say, oh, I'm just tired. Oh, I need to have a nap, or I need to have a rest, or I don't want to push. But instead, I said, well, hang on. No, let's not make that the habit. Let's just use 90 minutes and push through and then take a rest if you need to. Right. So you've got to train yourself so that all right, is this mental fatigue or am I just being soft? Most people will not push through. So I would always say, I did this with live stuff early on. I said, right, I've got stuff to do. I've got to push through. But then I realized that I wasn't able to push through all the time with some of these things, and I was confused about what's going on. Why am I feeling like this? And then I started to uncover it that it's because of this. I'm just emotionally wiped as a result of it. So now that I'm aware of it, I can plan accordingly. So great questions this week. Thanks, everybody. Go ahead and have a great week. Please send any questions. You can either do it here on YouTube, or you can email me at studiospt.com.au. You can do it through there. I'll put my email in the link below as well. If you'd like a free consultation personally with me, I'll put the link in there for that at studiospt.com.au. I do that all around the world. I do remote coaching all over the place. So all you need is an internet connection. So have a strong week. Thanks for your questions this week, and I will see you next time.